Welcome to Let's Thrive Postpartum.
Hi, and welcome back to Let's Thrive Postpartum. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Ashley.
Today, we are going to talk to you about a very special type of topic. It's Veterans Day this week, and we wanted to do a episode honoring all the women who are in the military, who are having children, all the military spouses who are going through this. And Ashley kind of talk through some unique challenges and support opportunities for them, because I can only imagine how hard it is to have a child. But
Mhm.
then if you are an active duty military, if you're a veteran, or if your spouse is a military service member, how hard this could be on you in the pregnancy postpartum
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah. And so for anyone out there, know that Kelly and I, we know the difference between veterans and active duty.
Yeah.
A lot of the data and research that's been done and collected kind of puts it all together. So we're gonna break out. We have a couple like separate things like veteran moms.
Mhm.
And so that would be moms who have had babies as veterans. So after they separated from the military. There's also a lot of data for moms who are in the military, whether they themselves are active duty or they are a spouse. And so, in general, maternal mental health in the military is not talked about. And we figured that this would be a good week to bring this topic up and highlight some things that we feel are really important.
Absolutely.
And
And I wanted to stat that we're going to be sourcing a really great resource. We're going to put it down in the show notes for you if you want to link to it. But the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance has pulled so much data together on this topic that we
mm,
want to make sure that we are citing them. And also, we're giving you this resource down below. Please click in and learn more.
Yeah. So, why is this a topic that we should care
Yeah.
about? So, I mean, for me personally, my husband was in the army. We met, and I always like to clarify, I was never a military spouse. I am a spouse of a veteran. So, I don't take the claim of
Uh-huh.
the hardships and everything that people endure when you are married to an active duty military member. But because of that, and because of my husband's work in DC, we've worked really closely with the military and veteran community for years on lots of different advocacy pieces with healthcare and education and that kind of thing. And so being able to give some of these women in the military space a voice, even here, I think is really important because it's not an insignificant group of women. And so just to kind of give some numbers for you guys to think about. So the number of spouses in the military that are women is currently around 920,000. It's 92% of the spouses. The number of those giving birth annually is around 85,000 women. So these are spouses. The number of active duty service members who are giving birth annually is around 16,000. And the number of veterans, women, female veterans that are giving birth annually is around 10,000. So altogether, we're looking at over 100,000 women every year who are giving birth that have a connection to the military. So this isn't like a small number, Kelly. We're not talking about like 100 people.
No, it's a significant amount. And first off, thank you all for what you are doing for all of us, spouse, veteran, active service member. Thank you for this. But it is 100,000. And Ashley, you and I talk very frequently about the general statistics that
Mhm.
1 in 5 new moms are going to suffer with maternal mental health issues. How is that different in the military? I can see there'd be a lot of more
Yeah.
emotions and challenges that they have that are just very unique to the military life. Does that
Yeah.
impact
So
the number?
it does. So it's 1 in 5 in the general population, but when they look at in the military population, it's an estimated around 35% of these women are experiencing maternal mental
Wow.
health conditions. There's been one study that showed that 50% of moms who have a spouse who's deployed have experienced postpartum depression. So 50%.
So if you're
Um,
sitting right there and you're doing the quick math listening to us, 100,000 women up to maybe 50%, that's 50,000 women every year who are
yeah,
suffering from postpartum depression just in the military life.
yeah.
That's a lot of moms,
Yeah. And so
families.
And then in addition, like there's a little bit more data specific to veterans.
Okay.
So they've said that around 28% of pregnant veterans and around 40% of postpartum veterans experience maternal mental health conditions. And so these numbers are the rates of these maternal mental health conditions are occurring at really, I mean, much higher rates than they are in the general population. It's around 25% the general population, up to 40 to 50% in the military, spouse, active duty, and veteran population. And there are a whole myriad of reasons about why this is. Kelly, we've talked a lot about, some of the risk factors for postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, OCD, the whole range of maternal mental health conditions. And some of them, there's the laundry list, right, of what some of these risk
So
factors
many.
are. But when we're looking at people connected to the military, that sometimes can include, a lack of support in family. So if you have a spouse who's deployed, if you're living on base, if you're moving around, you may not be close to a support network who's able to come in and
Mhm.
provide that like physical and sort of like wellness support that so many people need. There are some barriers to care in terms of the stigma about talking about mental health, about asking for help. And there's also something that is very serious that has come up in lots of news articles and stuff over the past couple of years talking about women, but there's a really high rate of women who report a sexual trauma while they are in the military. And so, for people currently in the military or veterans who had that experience while they were in the military, that is a significant risk factor for some of these maternal mental health conditions. And so, this one study has cited that around 1 in 3 women veterans have reported military sexual trauma. You might see it's called MST, is how it's reported often in lots of different news articles, which increases the risk for PTSD and postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, any mental health disorder. Veterans tend to have higher rates of adverse childhood experiences. And I don't know that we've ever talked about this, Kelly, but this is something that I
Love it.
assess all of my clients for.
Mhm.
There's a survey, it's called the ACEs study, and people go through and check off whether they've had a certain number of what have been called kind of traumatic experiences. And it ranges anywhere from abuse to divorce to homelessness, living with a parent with, drug or alcohol use, that kind of thing. And depending on the score, it does make it more likely that they're at a higher risk for certain mental health conditions. And so the same is true for this population as well. Yeah, it's one of the things that when you're working with people in any way, it's nice to look at a holistic picture. But when you're working with people that have military experience and background, there are so many factors that can be helpful to understand because it all ties together into what's affecting them currently. And so it's not just like what's happening right now, but sometimes helping unravel like what has happened before, what's happened within your family, what are some of these experiences been, and how have they affected you and kind of put you in the circumstances that are going on right now it's really, really important.
It is. So that is the veteran mother section. What about active duty female service members or the spouses? Are there any kind of different increases to risk for them that we should talk about?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about like frequent moves, prolonged separations. And so that kind of is, the lack of support, kind of increased anxiety and that kind of thing. Um, there's also within the military culture, there's a big emphasis on like being strong and self-reliant, this kind of thing, and which makes it really hard to ask for help. We know that like military service members and mental health, like that's been a big thing for a long time,
Mhm.
but for their spouses as well, you're so closely tied into that military culture. You're a part of that culture because your spouse is in the military and you're kind of expected to conform to those cultural norms as well. And that makes it really, really difficult for some moms to seek support and help when they need it, because they don't want it to potentially reflect badly on themselves, the spouse, the family, and that kind of thing.
Which makes a lot of sense and also makes my heart hurt. Like, how can we help women going through this situation? And I can see the military culture perspective.
Hmm.
And I just wish there was an easier way. Because one of the things that, we've referenced the sheet that we're pulling from, but they've included some quotes of some military mothers that
Yeah.
I want to read just a few of them so that you can hear if you're not an active military mother, of trying to understand what that perspective is. But one says, I was afraid I would lose my security clearance if I took antidepressant medication, which you may need to feel better. But does that
Yeah.
mean you're going to lose your job? Another
Yeah.
one said, you're just told to suck it up and put your big girl panties on and just deal with it. Again, it may not be the most helpful way to get through some of this. And
Yeah.
one even said, I lied on my screening because I was afraid they were going to take your child away from me. And so a lot of this makes sense in some ways. And there has to be a better way to support
Yeah.
women in this situation. Ashley, is there anything? So that's a lot of, if you don't know the situation, but if you're a mom listening who is
Yeah.
in this life style, excuse me, what, talking to them, what
Hmm.
can we offer as far as support, ideas, things to help them in this unique situation? What do you
Yeah.
recommend?
So, I mean, within the military, there's often some really strong connections between spouses. So, in terms of just having some other people to talk with, if that feels like a safe space for you, no matter who you are, connecting with other moms is going to be something that's helpful and supportive. If you're not comfortable reaching out to the military doctors, to the VA, and going through those types of channels for support or medication, there are also lots of different programs and nonprofits and other groups out there that can provide support. And so some of them, an example here in Charleston, there's like a very small group that meets through the VA, that meets online, that's for moms with postpartum depression and anxiety. That's like a very hyper local one. I would suspect that in a lot of areas that have VA hospitals, there's the potential that there are some other groups that are also offering supports like this. There are ways of, seeking outside counseling, potentially outside care if you have the financial means to do so. And then there's also platforms like Thrive where you can get support and talk and make some of these connections outside of the formal channels. And so that feels a lot like sometimes like a safer space for moms when they
Mhm.
know that they're in a group that's a little bit separate, that they're able to talk about some things and know that it is something that can stay separate.
It
Um,
is.
yeah.
Yes, if you want to check us out at wethrivepostpartum.com, it's a safe place to come on your phone to get that extra support. And if you're abroad, Postpartum Support International has a lot of different support groups across
Mm-hmm.
the world, just in case you are on a military base that's not in the US. They may be a great resource as well. But I think having that ability to talk to someone, depending on your comfort level of where they are, whether it's
Yeah.
an anonymous group, somebody who's through it, or through your military doctor.
Yeah. Well, and these days too, just looking, I always tell people, Facebook these days is vast and deep in terms of the groups and the people that are on there. And so sometimes just doing a quick search to see like, is there a military mom support group in my town? Is there one close by? Is there, even if it's just a handful of people that get together to walk and kind of talk every week? I know that it's really important for veterans and for people that are part of the more active duty military side that they are able to connect with people who know what that experience is like. And so it can be really hard seeking out and going into a mom group where you're the only person who's a veteran, right? You're the only
Mhm.
person who is a spouse or who is currently on active duty. That can feel very isolating because most people, like fewer than 1% of the US population has served in the military. So it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a small community in and of itself, but out in the larger world, it's very likely that you would be the only person if you're joining a mom's group. And so any ways that if it feels comforting and safe and good to try and connect with other moms who have had that experience, we know that can be really impactful towards healing. And that's not just for military moms. That's sometimes for any groups. When you're able to connect with people who have a similar experience and background, that might be adding to what's going on with your mental health after having a baby. It is really important to feel like other people have that shared experience. It encourages people to open up, to be a little bit more honest, it's very validating. And people tend to say they kind of like trust what another person says or what they have found helpful for them when they know that that person has had the same experience.
You're right. And just in case you're a military mom and just checking us out for the first time, Ashley, that's what you're talking about is a lot of social support that has been proven to really help moms with postpartum mental health issues. There's also talk therapy. There's also medication. There's a variety of things that you can do. Ashley, are there any general tips that if a mom is listening to us for the first time that she can do in addition to social support, talk therapy, medication that might be helpful in this situation?
I mean, I think that education is kind of the biggest superpower.
Agree.
And so like fact sheets like this that we're going to link in the show notes, reading up and seeing, getting some more information that you're able to take to a doctor or to use that to decide, like maybe I would like to see another doctor or talk to another doctor. They've also included so many different resources on here too, but if this is like, oh yeah, like this kind of sounds like me, like getting informed is always like step number one to have a better understanding of what's happening with you, why it may feel harder if you're part of this group, like what some of the kind of unique circumstances are. And then trying to decide what feels, and I say the word safe because sometimes, it doesn't feel safe to talk to certain doctors, or it doesn't feel safe to disclose certain things within a certain community. So if it feels safe to go to your doctor at the VA or within the military, do that. If not, check out some of these other resources. There are different nonprofits and stuff out there who can help people connect with outside care, and start down that road. And I guess with education too is the first part is just saying like, hey, I think I do need some extra help.
You do. And I
Yeah.
think it's also knowing you're not alone in this. If
Yeah.
up to 50% of pregnant moms experience something, I think even just the validation of this isn't, this is very heavily, this happens a lot in this population.
Yeah.
And if you see other pregnant or new moms in your community, they likely, it's 1 in 2 chances have gone through something similar. So it's a little easier to open that door and have those conversations to
Yeah.
support each other. And also, we're always here at Thrive if you need additional education, support. We thank you for everything that you have done for us as a country and as a people.
Yeah.
And anything that we can do to give back, please let us know. Also, if you just want someone to chat to ask questions, please feel free to email us. I'll put our podcast at wethrivepostpartum.com email address. Ashley and I are available. If you have questions, send them to us and we can get back to you.
Yeah, please do.
Ashley, anything else that you want to say
I think the
to
last
our
thing is
military moms?
just, is like for anyone out there, there's probably a much larger number of people who are not connected to the military that are listening to this week. And it's just to keep in mind that if you do know of any military mom in your life, whether they are a veteran, whether they're active duty, whether they're a spouse, know that they might need a little extra support, right? They could use a little extra connection. Not that they necessarily need it, but that it's a possibility. So keep that in mind if that's somebody that lives in your neighborhood. And we say this for all new moms. It's nice just to reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about you this week. If there's anything I can do to help and support, would love to help out.
That's wonderful. Thank you again, moms. We're thinking about you. Please let us know if we can help. And happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans.
Happy Veterans Day.
We'll see you next week.
If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please be sure to hit subscribe, leave us your feedback, and give us a 5-star review. For even more support, visit us at wethrivepostpartum.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community. Remember, you are not alone. With support, you can feel better. Together, let's thrive postpartum.